So it's been over a year since Mortal Kombat 1 was released. I believe it came out in Q3 of 2023, if I'm not mistaken. And for the most part, this is a game that a lot of people feel like is, for the most part, underwhelming. Now, don't get me wrong, the gameplay for Mortal Kombat 1 is better than that of MK11 because one of the biggest complaints that we got about MK11 was that the gameplay was too slow. But at the same time, some people will go on record and tell you that the graphics for MK11 was a lot better. And and not only that, I feel like Mortal Kombat in general has kind of lost its edge. Now, don't get me wrong. Like with every entry that comes out, we get more blood, gore, and violence and all that stuff. But if you look at MK1 and you compare it to some of the previous games, especially MK10 and MK11 in terms of dialogue and stuff like that during versus battles, it's not nearly as edgy as it used to be. And I feel like the interactions between characters were among the few things that made some of the older MK titles an attraction. Now, you look at Mortal Kombat 1, right? This game got a Metascore of 83, but it got a user score of 6.6. And then you look at like Mortal Kombat 11, that got a Metascore of 82 and a user score of 4.2, average. And it's funny because it seemed like MK1 is getting a lot of hate nowadays. And now people are going back and saying, well, MK 11 was better than MK1. And the thing is, like, Mortal Kombat 11 ended up being like the best selling game in the entire like franchise. I think it did somewhere around the ballpark of 15 million copies in terms of sales. But I don't know. Like a lot of people go on record and tell you that that game was a step down from MK10 and MK9. And to this day, I feel like Mortal Kombat 9 was like probably one of the best games that we've gotten. I feel like Mortal Kombat 9 has been better than MK1 and MK11 because everything about MK9 was good. Like the story, which pretty much told or basically reflected upon the events from the original three Mortal Kombat games from the 90s. And the aesthetics look dope, the character designs look great, the women looked hotter. Just about like almost everything about MK9 was just like, amazing for the most part. I feel like 2011 in general was just a good year. Not just for gaming, for just about like everything, like music, pop culture, everything. 2011 is one of the few years that I look back fondly upon and I actually miss, but yeah, like I do feel that MK9 is probably one of the best fighting games that Warner Brothers had put out, and it doesn't seem like with some of the latest Mortal Kombat games, Warner Brothers has not been able to capture that, magic, and NetherRealm Studios has been able to produce anything remotely as good as that. And it just feels like, the graphics get better, and I guess the gameplay gets better, hit or miss. And MK1, it's not, I don't know, I feel like it's not as bad as people make it out to be because you have a game that has like a story mode, online multiplayer mode, you have offline gameplay, you have an invasion mode, which is something that people have polarizing opinions about. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like the whole idea of the story being in an alternate universe where I guess like Liu Kang is like an elder god, it's kind of weird because I know it's like, they try to like start everything over after MK11, but I don't know. I think people were fans of the original storyline up until MK11 because a lot of people didn't like Chronica as the main villain, and because they thought she was a hack and she was too powerful and all this other stuff. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like, Mortal Kombat 1 is kind of just like they didn't know where to go after MK11, so they decided to do this and start everything over and whatever. But But yeah, I feel like Mortal Kombat 1 should have ended up being a bigger success because last time I checked, I think the game has reached like 5 million copies in terms of overall sales. And I feel like as big of a franchise as Mortal Kombat is, it definitely should have sold a lot more in a shorter period of time. And if this game sells like significantly less than Mortal Kombat 11, then that's actually not a good sign. But at the same time, 5 million in terms of sales is actually considered to be pretty good by today's standards because you have a lot of video games that struggle to break like 3 million in terms of sales. And I feel like that's just a trend that indicates that there is a huge problem with gaming and the gaming industry in general. And yeah, I mean, I feel like, Mortal Kombat 1 for the most part, it's not as great as people are making it out to be. It's not as great as people are saying because I feel like it's one of those things that's highly over advertised, and it's to a point where it seems like we're getting all these DLC characters to compensate for the fact that it's not on par with like some of the previous entries in the series because we've gotten like at least I want to say like I don't even know how many DLC characters we've gotten. I've lost count, but we've gotten names like Homelander, we've gotten like T-1000, we've gotten Conan the Barbarian, Freddy Krueger, Ghostface from Scream, and we even got like some of the like older characters from the Mortal Kombat games that people don't talk too much about, and I feel like they're doing everything to kind of pull out the stops and trying to make Mortal Kombat 1 bigger attraction than it actually is. And I remember like when Mortal Kombat 9 and 10 came out, they didn't need all these like DLC characters to draw attention to the game. And honestly, I feel like the whole thing with adding DLC is just a money grab. They're just trying to make more money, and they want to make you pay for, I guess, certain characters that should be in the game, and then there are certain characters that have no business being in the game, but having them in the game is something that would appeal more to casuals. But the thing is, like about a decade ago, or like almost 15 years ago, Mortal Kombat was a game that just appealed to casuals, you know? Warner Brothers didn't have to go out of their way to add, dozens of, DLC to make people care about, some of their older video games. And I do see that as somewhat of a problem. Now, as far as Mortal Kombat 1 is concerned, I wouldn't say that it's overrated. I just feel like it's overhated for the most part because a lot of people go on record and tell you that Mortal Kombat 1 is actually, better than Mortal Kombat 11, but it doesn't really touch Mortal Kombat 10 or 9 because Mortal Kombat 10 had gotten a Metascore of 83 and a user score of 7.7, and Mortal Kombat 9 from 2011 got a Metascore of 86 and a user score of 8.4. And that game came out during like the PS3, Xbox 360 era of gaming. And I really don't know what it is, but there's just something about that particular time period that was just amazing because that was back when realism wasn't heavily emphasized. You found a healthy balance between realism and like it being a video game. Of course, we all know like all the Mortal Kombat games are video games, but I just felt like back then, like the aesthetics, the lightning, and all that other stuff, the character designs, and it mattered way more back then, apparently, than it does now. And I don't know. I don't know if Warner Brothers and NetherRealm Studios will ever be able to match Mortal Kombat 9 in terms of overall quality. But yeah, I don't think Mortal Kombat 1 is nearly as bad as people say it is, but at the same time, it's not this it's not this great game that's on par with like some of their older entries. And I'm not exactly sure whether or not this is a sign on whether people are getting like bored or sick of the Mortal Kombat series or whether or not like, it's just not as much of a mainstream attraction as it once was like 10 or 15 years ago.